Hi, my name's Gareth. My Scratch project was designed with the intent to provide learners in Year 3 an opportunity to learn about climate regions. The original conceit of the project was for users to learn about the climatic behaviour of the polar zones and discover the similarities and differences between the two regions. I've elected to firstly discuss my personal reflection regarding preparing and submitting the Scratch project as it contextualizes the subsequent theory. My ambition for the project was to provide an interactive learning project that lends towards the augmentation element of the SAMR model and emphasize analysis within Bloom's. Unfortunately, my ambition and my technical capabilities couldn't converge. My experimentation within Scratch brought frustration and angst. I simply wasn't adept with this sort of software. The longer I worked on the project, I realized all I could achieve with my skill set was create a learning narrative of climate regions, and a clunky one at that, with incorrect coding and a very rudimentary understanding of how to design a program. I found this process akin to picking up a musical instrument and trying to learn how to play and read music in 2 weeks. If I were to complete a project like this in the future, or apply it in an educational setting, I'd need assistance from another party. I believe that it's okay to outsource skills that you're deficient in. I can envision a design, but it takes a proficient coder to realize the idea. If I were to embrace a growth mindset and attempt coding again, I'd require a classroom setting with a more knowledgeable other to provide the necessary scaffolding. Therefore, the following discussion considers the project I envisioned rather than the outcome. The intent of the project was to align with the augmentation level of the SAMR model. The incorporation of interactive media, including interactive sprites and audio commands, was planned to provide learners a choose-your-own-adventure style program. By making the project non-linear, my intention was to allow pacing of learning to be set by the user and therefore make a functional improvement to the task. The eventual outcome, though, was closer to a substitution classification, as I was unsure how to make a non-linear project and it became didactic. Unfortunately, the narrative project simply served as a replacement to a conventional lesson. The project attempted to achieve the higher order thinking skill of analyzing within the Bloom's taxonomy pyramid. The sought objective was for learners to draw upon their existing climate knowledge and identify how it associates to climates and regions which they may be unfamiliar with. An example of this is considering how the length of day differs dependent upon geographical location and how that relates to their own experiences. The original model intended users to compare and contrast the two polar regions in question by analysing the common attributes of the flora or fauna of the geography. Students were to deconstruct these organisms and find what attributes they possess that enables their survival in polar regions. The eventual project reflected an applying level, as it didn't reach the original ambition as the identification of relationship component wasn't met. My aspiration for this project was to incorporate Gee's learning principles. Not all were fully met, however. The design sought to include, firstly, the situated meanings principle. Students learn new vocabulary and geographical concepts by experiencing them within the project. The self-directed approach to learning new ideas within a game enables users to develop their knowledge at their own pace and link the new ideas to each other to form a fuller comprehension of the topic, in this case the polar climate regions. Secondly, the multiple routes principle. The Polar Regions project was intended to be a non-linear experience whereby the user could navigate their way through the project however they preferred. This is essential to good game design as it engages learners and encourages the user to interact with the information autonomously and without applying a set path for completion. The original concept would have allowed the user to select geographical regions and to make choices within those regions that impacted their subsequent progress. Lastly, the subset principle. The project sought to convey a simplified version of a real-world location and provide an entry-level understanding of the environment of the polar climate regions. The regions possess fundamental and common conditions, and therefore, if they're grasped by the user, this can enable a learner to develop a deeper knowledge of this topic. The project envisioned to convey the following affordances. Firstly, ubiquitous learning. The Scratch website, and therefore my project, is an example of software that is openly accessible for learners, regardless of background, as it requires no subscription and no paywall. However, it should be noted that Scratch is still dependent upon an internet connection. Additionally, my project only catered to English language speakers. Secondly, active knowledge making. The project was intended to engage students in the learning process and had the ambition to forego passive learning and enable users to interact with the content. Scratch also provides the opportunity to remix the projects, and therefore the information can be exchanged and modified to enhance active knowledge making. And finally, differentiated learning. The preferred version of my project would have emphasized the capacity for learners to access the content that considers the user's identity. Specifically, disability or language background would not be a barrier to understanding the concepts. Real-world climate patterns and individual personal experience with climate is universal. It should be noted that differentiated learning and therefore my project model facilitates users with disability as it considers the respective aptitudes of different learning competencies by emphasizing a visual and spatial instruction.